Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat as we continue our look at our favorite bands from A to Z. Today, we've arrived at the letter B. We're just getting started. So we got in the house, we got a big crew here today. We've got Stephen Reed all the way from Scotland. We got Chuck Alvarez from New York, Anthony Ferraro from PA, Chad Hutchinson from PA, Eric Porter from upstate New York, Louis Nasser from Chicago by way of Mexico right now. We got Ken Golden, the professor of prog from New Jersey, and George Lamy from Chicago. And of course, I am here in New York in the Hudson Valley, as always. All right. Greetings, gentlemen.
Greetings.
What's up? Hope everybody's AC is working good, because mine certainly isn't. I'm hoping I have better news
for you, brother.
It's going to be a long friggin' night. We'll see. See how it goes. I got all the fans going, so hopefully they can fix my central air tomorrow. Otherwise, yeah, you know what the alternative to that is. Anyway, letter B. As last week with letter A, we have each picked our three favorite prog metal fusion bands or artists that start with the letter A. As I think someone pointed out last week, if it's a artist, we're going by the first letter of the last name, right? So we're gonna have, I think, geez, what did we do last week? Did we go one pick at a time and go around three times? Is that what we did last week? All right. We will do that again, and then we'll save some room at the end for honorable mentions. So we'll go in the order that I just introduced everybody. So we'll go Stephen across. So that's Stephen, Chuck, Anthony, Chad, Eric, Lewis, Ken, George, myself, and then we'll go back around again. So Mr. Reed, what do you got for your first B band?
Well, I just want to start by saying, Peter, that I feel your pain because I'm sitting here and there's no AC here either. We don't have air conditioning, but this is Scotland, so we don't need air conditioning. It doesn't exist here. It's not a thing. Nobody has it in the house because it's pleasantly cool here.
Wait, is that supposed to make him feel better, Stephen?
Oh, no, not really. So anyway, my first pick. So I would guess that most of us are going to pick, niche prog acts, maybe some vintage bands. I'm down with the kids. I know what's happening out there. So my first pick is having major chart success as we speak. Is huge news out there right now. This artist has had a #1 UK single this year. Okay? I'm hip and happening, I am. So I'm talking about, and I'm not going to pick out a favourite album because we've been promising for a long time to do a ranking the album show of Kate Bush. So it will come from one of these. So Kate Bush is my first choice. I mean, being serious here, there's just, is Kate Bush prog? Is she pop? Is she art rock? Does she care? No, she doesn't care. And that to me is the key thing. There's pop sensibilities here, there's great choruses and everything that she's done. She's been an innovator throughout her entire career. And it is really quite wonderful to find a whole new generation discovering her music through, Stranger Things, but if that's the way that it works, then that's the way that it works, and I'll be happy with that. What I love and have always loved about Kate Bush, even when she just disappeared, was she does her own thing, she does it in her own way. The albums are cohesive, and they're mad, and they're brilliant, and I just don't think she's really put a foot wrong throughout her entire career. I just think she's been absolutely amazing. I mean, her first #1 here in the UK was in 1978, and 42 years later, she's got her second #1. That is the longest span for any female artist here in the UK. And it's just been an absolute joy and a pleasure to see so much coverage for Kate Bush in recent weeks and months over here. So it's been really good. So yeah, Kate Bush is my first choice.
I had a feeling she would show up at some point here today.
I was really pleased to be first tonight.
All right, Chuck.
Excuse me, guys. Well, I love Kate Bush, but once again, I just want to say hello to you all and so. Been missing for a couple of weeks and so. Hope everything's okay with you fellas. My number one, that is from Budgie. No, Budgie is my number one band. So I took the album In for the Kill. They happen to be one of these bands that that most who've never heard them are always compared to Rush. Two totally separate bands. The Rush was a very technical band. Budgie was like down to earth, man. Always been one of my favorite bands. When this came up, and so I just wanted to make sure that I was healthy enough to put this album and to talk about these guys. That's my number one, Budgie, In for the Kill.
Hey, Chuck, is that the one to start with?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
My favorite.
Yeah. My favorite. Mm-hmm.
It's the most hard hitting, right?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, Bandolier is probably more of their proggier, but that's my favorite too.
But that one right there, that's killer, man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bold pick, Chuck. I mean, many people will argue they're probably more of a hard rock proto metal band, but they did have their moments where they kind of dabbled in prog and psychedelia and a little folk and things like that. So they're kind of one of those bands that they don't really fit too neatly anywhere, right? So I love them though. I mean, they were in my top 10 in the recent Power Trio bands show. I love Budgie. Great.
Hey, they got the Patrick Woodruff covers, so that's gonna help, right?
Oh, Roger Dean.
Roger Dean, yeah. So
I just never knew where to jump in with them.
That's I would say that it's either that or Bandolier. What's the
first five?
I was gonna say the same exact thing. The first 5 albums.
Well, to be fair, I think Ken is probably scared of them because they're named after a bird.
That's true. That has something to do with it.
That's right. You don't like birds, right?
I have very bad fear of birds. Very bad.
Oh my God! I'm bringing a cockatoo to your house.
Wow!
And my wife will twist its head off.
Wow!
And it'll go right in my smoker.
No animal dismemberment talk on this show. Come on.
I can hear it coming.
All right, Mr. Anthony.
My first pick for the letter B is going to be, I'm going with Sid Barrett. This is his second LP from it's November of 1970, produced by David Gilmour. We all most people know the story about what happened with Sid and kind of going off the deep end. And his 2 albums, they're very singer-songwriter-ish, but very psychedelic, a little depressing, very moody, beautiful in spots. This is probably my favorite of the 2. They did try to do a couple shows, and I remember it was Sid and David, and I forget who the drummer was, but while during the show, into the 3rd song, Sid just walks off stage during the concert and never was heard from again. So I'm going Sid Barrett, 1970. The album's called Barrett.
Nice.
Was Jerry Shirley playing with him, I think?
Yeah. Yes, Jerry Shirley, yes.
Very young Jerry Shirley, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a bold pick.
Yeah. All right, Chad, you're up.
Okay, my number 3 is a band that's more of a chamber rock kind of thing, a little quirky, good sense of humor, great musicianship. And I'm going with New England's Bird Songs of the Mesozoic.
Wow.
Always liked their records. This happens to be their live album that we put out from their Near Fest performance called 2001 Live Birds. If anybody still reads it, PM me. I still have some.
Oh yeah.
But it's they're just a lot of fun. The piano, I'm trying to remember. They have a woodwind. It's been a long time.
I think they've got a little bit of everything, Chad.
Yeah, they do. They all kind of moved around instruments during their performance. All instrumental, but quirky and fun and kind of all over the place. Really great guys. Solid discography on cuneiform. So Bird Songs of the Mesozoic.
Nice. Eric, our center square for today.
And Chad, don't forget, we're doing a beer trade for that one at Ken's, right?
It's already set aside.
Okay, beautiful. So
Are
my
they
number
still
3,
together?
I'm going with Bruford.
Are they
Oh,
still
sorry.
together?
Bird Songs?
Yeah.
No, they haven't done anything in quite a while.
Nothing
They did
recent.
some other project with a singer that I think Steve Feigenbaum put out, but that was a while ago. I haven't heard much from them in a while.
Sorry, Eric.
It's all good. I'm going to go with Bruford for my number 3. And I think the only misstep for this band was bringing in Annette Peacock to sing. But other than that, they're great compositions, and getting to hear Holdsworth. And again, I know we've talked about Alan's playing, and I feel the same way as you, Pete. I know you've said it 100 times. I like him better with other people than his solo stuff. And I think Alan's amazing on both of those. And Dave Stewart doesn't usually get talked about very much, and what a great keyboard player he is. But I think with Bruford, the thing is, it's the songs. Great players. You got Jeff Berlin as well, with obviously Bruford, but they're great songs. They're memorable songs, and getting to hear Holdsworth play with this band was fantastic. So that's my number 3, Bruford.
Nice.
Fainting in Coils, Eric. Boy, oh boy, what a tune.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Lewis.
All right. Is it too early to declare a tie for number 3? Is that like a dick move? Because I have no problem being considered a dick. That's right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And it's a tie because I just really couldn't choose which of the two I liked better. So I'm gonna give it to Beardfish, tied with Between the Buried and Me. I think that both of those bands are very, very different. I don't know any of the guys in Between the Buried and Me. I know Ricard and some of the other dudes. Beardfish is no longer a band, but anybody who wants to hear their music, you can find it anywhere. I'm sure Ken still stocks some of their records, or
Yep.
It's great Swedish prog. Ricard is a very, very talented songwriter. He sings, he plays guitar, he plays keys. It's just beautiful stuff, and it has its own sound. It's not a rip-off of other stuff. So that's what I love about them. Just like Between the Buried and Me is like a very hard-hitting, take the Dream Theater mold and just give it a bunch of steroids and caffeine. And it's just great stuff. So that's my number 3s. Sorry.
BT Bam. Yes, indeed. All right, Ken.
So my number 1, I've talked about to death, Banco de Terra. So I'm gonna just stick that in my honorable mentions, and I'll be bummed if nobody else talks about it. So I have 3, and they're not in any particular order. First one I'll talk about, Il Balletto di Bonzo, East. 1972 is the second album. Some people consider it to be the best prog album ever from Italy. And frankly, I kind of have a hard time arguing with them. It's
Great album though.
Yeah, it's way beyond. Their first album was Serial 2222, and that wasn't a particularly good album. Then Johnny Leone, keyboard player, came into the band, and he took over. He's totally in charge. And it's just like this full-on keyboard assault, heavy Hammond organ, mini Moog runs, lots of piano, mellotron through the whole album. It's a pounding rhythm section. Guitar play is very heavy. But it's pretty much the Gianni Leone show. It's this concept album, long tracks. And it's interesting thing I always found about this album is that guys who are into like metal and hard rock love this album. They always kind of, tag this album. I was never really that attached to it, but in recent years, I had a copy. I sold it, got it back, and I just really kind of fell in love with it. I think it's kind of a jaw-dropping album.
Great
Balletto di Bonzo, East, really one of the great prog rock albums of all time.
Lewis, didn't you give that as a homework assignment to Chris Allen way back when?
I did, and he dug it. I bought it at Orion Studios from Chris Lamke, and the way that he made me buy it, he said, "What would you say if I told you I had a record that sounds like ELP Goes to Hell?" And all I can do is take my fucking money, right? And I have never regretted it. And I've seen them live twice. So
They were good at Nearfest. I wasn't what I was expecting as a trio.
They were even better at Baja when I saw them there. They're just really good, you know.
Chad, was
really
he cool? Was Johnny cool? Because he was kind of weird walking around, with all his
No,
makeup.
he's weird. I think he was in the midst of or had just completed his sex change at that point.
Oh, so he seemed like he was in the process of. So
Yeah, that may have been. I don't recall, but I think you're right. I think it was in the process.
is he no
He was,
longer?
he was a little eccentric, shall we say?
Is he no
Yeah.
longer? Is he no longer Gianni? Is he Gianna?
Maybe he's Gina. I don't know. No clue.
Good keyboard player.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Great singer.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, it's kind of, he's not quite operatic on the album, but he's interesting voice. Great record.
All right, George.
My number 3 is Dewa Bajana, Indonesian guitar player, 13 albums.
He's got that many already. Holy cow!
Yeah.
That's the Leo
before
band,
Leonardo
Ken.
discovered him too. Wow, geez.
That's a Leo band.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, it's a friend of the channel and Anthony's uncle, Leonardo Pavkovic, on his first 5 or 6 albums, it was all in Indonesia, Indonesian guys. And then he came over to work with Leo, I guess. And the albums since then are high profile session guys on all of them. This one's got Tony Levin, Gary Husband, Guthrie Govan as guests, Danny Markovich, but all the albums are like that. The first one had Vinnie Colaiuta and Jimmy Johnson, just high quality guys. It's jazz fusion with a world music twist. Guy writes gorgeous melodies. It's not about playing. He doesn't really rip. It's more about emoting. But yeah, very consistent writer, and 13 albums. It's amazing. All the ones since he got with Leo are definitely worth picking up. Dewa Bajana.
Good stuff. All right, my first choice today is a guy in a band that weren't around for too long. They only have a very few albums. Each one is way different than the next. Sometimes you call them art rock, hard rock, glam rock, synth pop, whatever. Bill Nelson and Company, Bebop Deluxe. I chose Sunburst Finish. Could really choose any of them because they're all really damn good. A hell of a guitar player, really good songwriter. In fact, a ridiculously good guitar player that I think is so underrated. And a really good singer and arranger. And Bebop Deluxe is great because, like I said, all their albums are really different. They're all lots of fun. And by like 1980, he was pretty much done and moving into solo stuff. So he's been, relatively quiet since then, although he's put out a bunch of solo things. But yeah, Bebop Deluxe, great band. A band that I only really got into way too late, like in the last 5-10 years, but really dig them a lot. So
I never got to see them.
me neither.
Oh, yeah.
All right, back to Stephen.
Okay, well, seeing as Lewis is basically just making the rules up as we go along. Okay, so my second choice was Beardfish, but I'll go into my honourable mentions instead and come away with Blackfield. Okay, so this is the debut album from Blackfield. I think that's probably still the sweet spot for them. And I also think that this project is proof to anyone that was surprised that Stephen Wilson ended up doing music that's remarkably pop inflected. Well, hello. That it started a long time ago. But this is as much a vehicle for a guy called Aviv Geffen as it is for Stephen Wilson, although I will admit that I prefer the ones that Wilson is involved with earlier on, because they do tend to have more of a kind of prog feel to them. But there's no doubt that this is about the kind of 3-4 minute pop song with a little bit of the prog thrown in. But I really like them at this stage. They do kind of get a little bit lost later on, I think, in the most recent album, which escapes me the name of it, is a step too far into the kind of pop and dance and beats thing that, for me anyway. But early on, Blackfield were really good. And as I say, it's like Porcupine Tree meets the 3-minute pop song. So Blackfield are now my second choice.
Did you ever see them live, Stephen?
No, unfortunately not.
I did. I saw them in Philly.
I saw them in Virginia, and it was a remarkable show because I have never seen so many beautiful women, all of whom were Israeli, at a show. It was packed with Israeli women who were there for one reason and one reason only, Aviv, and they were wondering who the hell was that dude without shoes and that other guy with that crazy beard, because they invited Jordan Rudess to play keyboards. And they just didn't understand what was happening. And then after all the boring songs, Aviv just busted out his guitar and played the things that these ladies came to hear. So it was a very interesting night.
Yes, Aviv is blessed with looks, shall we say.
Yes. I wasn't complaining. It was a great environment to be in.
I'd love to have seen them. We'd love to have seen them.
Yeah.
It's not common at a Prague show, Lewis.
No.
No,
No.
that wasn't a prog show. That was an Aviv
No.
Geffen show with some prog seasonings that could be skipped over. But it was good.
All right, Chuck.
All right, my number 2 is from another band, that skittered on the fringes of prog rock. My number 2 is Blue Oyster Cult, and the album that I'm picking is of Secret Treaties, my favorite album by them, and which are probably amongst their most proggier moments, along with the other 2 albums. They've had proggier albums scattered throughout their entire career, but the first 3 you could really say were truly like skittered onto that progressive rock field. It was a lot of science fiction type lyricism, sometimes mythology as well, and it happens to be this album once again, man. Blue Oyster Cult is my number 2.
Legends.
That's a great choice because I find them a remarkably difficult band to categorize. They just you get lumped into that hard rock thing, and then you listen to them, you think that's really not what's happening here at all. It's a real strength. I think they're really right across the catalogue. The work's fantastic, but it's so varied as well. It's great.
They were called a metal band for so many years, and they were never metal.
Nope, not at all.
Well, Chuck went from Budgie to Blue Oyster Cult. I think he thinks it's Monday night.
I love both picks though. I think they both work.
Yeah, no, I think it's inspired.
I
think it's great. No, everybody's throwing out stuff that I was not expecting, so it's great.
Chuck, number 1 better not be Boston.
No.
Not that there's anything wrong with Boston.
No, not at all.
No, he's got it reserved for Buffalo Springfield.
Nice.
Just think when we get to D, someone can shout out the Dave Clark 5, right?
Yeah, of course. That's next week. That's next week.
My choice gone.
Anthony.
My number 2nd pick probably won't surprise many. He's played with. Came from Nashville, Tennessee. Was discovered by Frank Zappa. Played with David Bowie, and then in a couple of years he was playing with Robert Fripp. I'm talking about the one and only Adrian Belew. This is in Revolution. He's got a lengthy discography. He's had a lengthy career outside of King Crimson, outside of Frank Zappa, outside of playing with David Bowie. This one's from 1992, In a Revolution. This is probably my favorite solo record. I'm seeing him Saturday with the trio for the 8th time. So Adrian Belew is my number 2.
Very cool.
Do you like the new one, Anthony? Do you have it?
What's that?
How do you like his new one?
It's typical Adrian. It's not anything, different. It's just typical Adrian.
It's good. All right, Chad.
All right. My number 2 is a well-known fusion band with a lot of, what do you want to call it? Almost a super group kind of thing. And that's going to be Brand X. Great fusion. John Goodsall, some Phil Collins in there. Geez, I just lost the name of the bass player because he's Percy Jones. Sorry, brain fart. But great discography. I even like that Manifest Destiny album they put out. So number 2, Brand X.
Great choice. Eric.
All right, I heard Stephen use Sweet Spot, so I'm gonna use that as well for my number 2, and these 2 are the sweet spot for Jeff Beck. And I think the thing that always catches me with Jeff Beck, at least this period, I don't have his new Johnny Depp record, but in terms of these, I think you never feel like the band, as good as they are, as good as the players are on these records, you never feel like it's always the song and the melodies that really stand out. Obviously, the playing is fantastic, but there's so many memorable tunes on this. That's hard to say with instrumental music. You give people instrumental music, it's kind of in one ear and out the other. There's so many melodies on these that stick with you. And I love Jeff Beck's playing. We've talked about the Ronnie Scott show before, but I don't think there's a better sweet spot than these 2 albums. So that's my number 2.
Isn't it crazy how different those 2 albums are, yet they go hand in hand, and they go hand in hand till the end of the time?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great choice. All right, Lewis, back to you.
Okay, for my number 2, I'm gonna go with Bethany. It's a band that I really, really love.
Some nice
think
people
I'm
too,
frozen.
man. Mhm.
Bethany.
Yep.
Am I frozen?
No.
No.
You're back.
Okay, I was writing notes just in case I was frozen. I love those guys.
But you were just taking like a lengthy pause. I was like,
No, all of you guys froze. I thought, what the fuck?
I thought you were about to act out the whole album in mime.
I love Bethany. I know that Ben Levin and Jessica are quitting the band because they don't want to tour anymore. Ben Levin is a guitarist, Jessica's a bass player. They're married. I don't know what's going to happen to the band, but I hope they continue. I love those guys. And if people who don't know them, all their albums are different.
Yep.
They're very quirky. I know Steve Feigenbaum released one on Cuneiform, but you know, my favorite one was the Stolen Babies, I think it's called, is one of the earlier ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a song called Battle Creek, which I think most people would really dig. You don't have to be especially weird to like that, which is really good.
very cool. Ken.
My number 2, from Brazil, released in 1983, but reportedly recorded in 1977. Bacamarte. Depois do Fim. My Portuguese is non-existent, but that's what I got. And I'm just proud that I was able to hold this cover up and without any problems. There were a lot of great Brazilian bands in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, I can't figure it out. 70s and 80s, there were a lot of great Brazilian bands. And I think Bacamarte's album was probably the best of all of them. The main figures in the band was the vocalist Jane Dubac and the guitar player Mario Neto. There's a lot of keyboards and flute, a very important part of the sound, but Mario Neto's guitar playing is unbelievable. I'd never heard of this guy before or after, really fantastic. Guy's kind of channeling Steve Howe. He's playing acoustic or electric, just really, really impressive. There's a lot of flute that complements the sound. It's kind of like a sort of a classically influenced sound. Jane Dubac, her voice kind of reminds me a little bit of Annie Haslam, believe it or not. And I don't think it'd be a stretch to really broadly compare them, like, and say they were like Brazil's answer to Renaissance. Reminds me a bit of Novella. And exceptional album. Brilliant guitar work. Bacamarte, Depois do Fim.
Depois do Fim. Something.
Yeah. Have you heard, any of you guys heard this album?
Never.
I heard it a long time ago. I don't even remember what it sounds like.
Yeah. Really, really good.
Cool. All right, George.
And number 2 is Gurgle Borlai. This is a Hungarian jazz rock drummer. 4 albums. This one is 2011. This is where I came in, so this is why this is my favorite. It's if you find fusion a little limp or a little light for you, then this is a guy for you, because he composes on bass and keyboards, but being a drummer, he likes the tempos upbeat. So you will not find it boring. You may not like it, but he definitely keeps it moving. Gurgle Borlai.
Another album homework assignment too, George.
Yeah.
That was mine from you. Great stuff.
All right. Well, Ken wasn't going to talk about him, but I am. Banco del Mutuo Soccorso.
Thank you.
Otherwise known as Banco. Got to be here, right?
Yep.
Arguably
Especially that album. Especially that album.
I mean, yeah, my favorite album by them kind of changes daily, but this is generally 1 or 2. Darwin, the first album. You know, I mean, there's a lot of great albums. Arguably, in my opinion anyway, a top 3 Italian prog band of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even, you know, generally speaking, I know, you know, you put up a good case for Il Balletto di Bronzo, and to me, because they were only around for such a short period of time, that's to me is like one of the great albums. But as far as like the great bands, you know, PFM and Bonzo to me are just like,
The arm
They were
Right.
area.
Those were the bands. Those
Yeah.
two bands.
But you know what, man? Anybody who puts out an album like Di Terra, that's it, right?
I mean, so many of those 70s albums are great. Yeah, I mean,
That
an
whole run.
amazing vocalist, wonderful keyboards, great guitar work, complex,
Awesome drummer.
great drummer. I mean,
Mm.
it's like the total package, and it's just, you know, it's a shame that you know, for some people, it's the Italian vocals kind of get in the way of enjoying them. But to me, I treat his voice like another instrument, so it doesn't bother me at all. I actually like listening to him quite a bit, and it's got that romantic sound that, you know. I mean, a lot of us Italians kind of really understand that, but I think, you know, Italy is the language of love across the world, right? I would hope so. But yeah, if you've never listened to Bonzo, this is a great place to start. But they have a bunch of others that are really good. So
I'll never forget when they first played Nearfest. I guess it
that was wonderful.
2001. They were called back on for an encore, and Francesco just stood there in the middle of the stage and he cried.
Yeah,
Yes.
He was so touched by the response. It was an amazing, amazing moment.
absolutely.
I cried too. I cried like a fat chick on prom night when they played by the third song. It was
I'm
awesome.
telling you, I had douche chills. I'm telling you,
Yeah, it was really.
the hairs on my arm was standing up.
Oh yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would urge anybody who has never listened to Bonzo, just give it a try and just try and think of the vocals as like another instrument, because they're so beautiful. And you know, I get it. I don't understand what the hell they're singing about either. But to me, it's like I've gotten so used to them that they're just as beautiful as the keyboard work and the guitars and everything else. So it's yeah. Great.
If you really have a hard time with the vocals, get the English version. You know,
Yeah, and you know what? That's what I did, and that's a good point, Ken, because I remember when I was first starting to get into Italian prog, there was a blockade for me for non-English vocals. There was. And when I heard they did a couple albums with English vocals, I went out and got those. I was like, oh, this is pretty damn good, right? I like this. And then I went and heard the Italian versions of it, and I'm like, yeah, this is way better.
Yeah.
Now I don't even listen to the English language album.
No, those are like the gateway drug. They get you into it,
Right.
but then you hear the real McCoy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's a shame how after all these years, I have friends and a lot of customers who won't listen to foreign vocals, and they're missing out on some
What
extraordinary.
a shame.
Yeah.
Really,
Do those guys buy Magma records?
Magma albums? No, but nobody
Okay.
buys Magma. Nobody buys Magma albums.
Certainly not me.
Well, no, you bought them and then sold
I
them.
bought them and sold them. Yeah.
So
I'm not
somebody
buying
bought
anymore.
them.
It's really a shame. I don't care what language it is. If they're not singing in English, they won't listen. They won't
That's
listen.
too bad.
And and think about all the great Italian bands and some of the best progressive rock that's come out in the history of progressive rock has come from Italy.
Yep.
And these people are missing out on so much. Leorme, Bonzo, PFM. I mean, Aria. You could just go right down the list.
Ramus, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
Ramos,
oh, man.
and just amazing records, and they won't listen to it.
It's a shame because then you also have to think about the French bands too, man.
Yeah.
A lot of great French bands, superb French bands that
The Germans kind of got it right. I don't know, somehow, I don't know why, but the Germans, most of the German bands sang in English.
Yeah. True.
yeah.
There's very few, there's, Novalis and maybe a few others, but mostly they sang in English.
Purple Vogue.
I feel like we need to get Anthony an umbrella. I'm getting hot just watching that sun shining in the face.
He's
You know,
just showing off that he's got here.
You get a
Anthony-
sunburn by the time this episode is over.
Anthony is a comedic genius.
Anthony's gonna be like
He does
Two-Face.
all this shit on purpose. First it was a fucking yellow hoodie. Then it's pretending he doesn't know how to work a fucking computer camera. Now he's standing in the middle of the fucking ray of sunlight.
He's our
It's not an
sundowner.
accident.
Tell you.
He's sitting there
Madonna.
going, "Peter, look how warm it is here, and I don't care."
Stephen, what do you got?
Okay, so for my number one choice, I am not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend that this is going to be for everybody. I'd imagine that Timboness is the sort of thing that would make Ken Pete's head in the blender. But that is my number one choice. It's Timboness.
I got his new album right here.
Great album cover.
Because I'm still waiting for it to be delivered here, so I would love to hear it. Put it on in the background. So Tim Bowness is probably best known as the other guy in No Man. I'm on another Stephen Wilson project here, which not really the intention because Blackfield wasn't meant to be in my top three.
Sorry.
But Bowness for a long time it really was more of a kind of a collaborator. He did do No Man with Stephen Wilson, and he collaborated with Peter Chilvers, Richard Barbieri, a whole load of different people. And he was a main player and songwriter on albums going as far back as 1993. But it wasn't until 2004 that he did anything under his own steam. And then it was another 10 years until he actually kind of really kick-started a proper solo career. And since then, he's just been so prolific and so consistent. He's done another 5 albums in that time. And yet he's got a really distinctive style, and it is very melancholy. It's not cheerful music, it has to be said. And it tends to not be very cheerful themes that he sings about either. But if you like kind of relatable themes that are very real, delivered with real honesty, then to me, Tim is your man. I have a lot of time for what he does. It isn't music for every day, it isn't music for every occasion. But if you really want to sit back and get involved in an album and listen to the stories, he writes about characters and he really takes you through their highs and lows, quite a lot of lows to be fair. And I just love his music, I really do. 2014's Abandoned Dance Hall Dreams, and then from the next year, Stupid Things That Mean the World. These are the two that I continually go back to. Nice themed artwork, and that kind of continues on through them as well. But the whole catalogue that he's released since he started to be quite prolific as a solo artist is well worth checking out. So Tim Bowness is my number one.
Nice picks, man. Everybody's like killing it today, man.
Yeah, I like how we were all picking different stuff. This is great. Chuck.
All right, well, I'm gonna probably be one of those that's gonna repeat a theme over here. And so my number one, I'm surprised that no one didn't guess that I was gonna pick this band, is Bebop Deluxe. And the album that I picked is Modern Music. The reason why I picked that, especially with the recent version of the album that has all this fantastic live music on here. I envy everyone that saw this band during the 70s, man. So that I've heard for years that they opened up, matter of fact, the concert from Chicago in 1977, which is where they opened up for Thin Lizzy. And those who said Thin Lizzy was brilliant that night, but they said that Bebop Deluxe was better. I had to hear it just to get the view on it, because I've heard the Thin Lizzy version, but they were quite amazing on this over here. But once again, the album that I picked is Modern Music, which is their 4th album. An amazing band, Bebop Deluxe, my number one.
Very cool. All right, Mr. Sunshine, Anthony. Can't even see your
My
face
final pick.
What?
My final pick for the letter B. I'm going to go with Big Elf. This album
Nice.
is Hex from 2007. I think they have 5 albums, Pete.
I think you are correct. It's either 4 or 5, and they're all great.
5 albums. Basically, they're kind of like a prog metal kind of band. I always said that if Black Sabbath and Deep Purple had sex, this is what they would sound like. They're kind of on hiatus right now. Their last album was in 2012. Mike Portnoy produced it and played drums. Right now, the leader, Damon Fox, is playing keyboards for the Cult. He's been with the Cult, I think, for the last 6 or 7 years. So I don't know if they're going to get back together, but Big Elf, Hex from 2007. If you like your music kind of like dark and gloomy with some really cool harmonies, Big Elf is your band.
Yeah, great band. I like your description. I would toss the Beatles in there as well, because I know Damon Fox is a big Beatles fan. And it's these great vocal harmonies and these big heavy riffs and loads of Hammond organ and keyboards. Good band.
Oh,
The
yeah.
music is fun, even though it is kind of gloomy and it's catchy. It's fun. I don't know. Great band. Yeah, I miss those guys.
Well, the one video they did for the other album, I think he's wearing a King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King T-shirt.
Could be. I know he's a fan.
Oh, he must have stolen that from George's closet.
That's where that went, George. See that? in while you were sleeping. All right, Chad.
All right. Well, unlike some of you who dip into your honorable mentions when your picks get chosen, I'm sticking with my top three. And my number one, and Eric said enough about it, is Bruford. One of a kind, it's just a classic. It's probably one of my desert island, excuse me, desert island discs. Just always love this. There's not a bad song on it. It rips from top to bottom, and really can't say enough about it. So, Bruford, number one.
Cool. Eric.
All right, Chad, a little payback then. My number
That's
one
right.
is Brand X.
There we go.
Unorthodox behavior.
Good
From
trade.
1976. I had the pleasure to see them probably 5 or 6 times over the last couple of years. I know I've talked about it before, but I didn't get to see them in their heyday, and thankfully they toured a lot before John's passing. And I was always impressed, and I always enjoyed them better live. So picked up a couple of live things they released over the last couple of years as well. And it was always a thrill to see them. Thought they played great. A lot of albums. I think this one was 76, and then kind of morphed into Fire Merchants, I think, after that, and had a little band, Hey Asher. So same as you. I can't throw somebody else in there. Got to go Brand X number one.
Very cool.
It's sad, Eric, because Goodsall was just a monster player.
Enjoyed it. Enjoyed seeing him a lot.
Hey, can I jump back to Brand X and ask a question?
Yes.
So when Brand X toured the first time they came around, not Brand X, I'm sorry, a Bruford question. When Bruford, when UK came around the first time, they did Sahara of Snow.
Right.
Love it.
On One of a Kind. So was that a leftover UK track,
Yes, it
or
was.
was that a Bruford track?
Nope, it was a leftover.
I think that's a leftover UK track because they played that on the tour.
Yeah, well, as I said, they played that on the tour. I
I
just
was under the impression that was a song that Bruford brought, and they played live, and he decided to do it on his album because he left.
Well, Bruford and Jobson I think wrote part 2.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would-
I don't know.
Anybody watching the show know the answer?
I don't have a drink. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna get up to drink. I'm gonna go drinking later.
That's right. We did hear it. He
I'm
was
assuming
mentioned.
it's from the UK
Just a second.
sessions.
Anthony, see
There's a
what you started?
commitment right there. So he's gonna go get a damn drink.
I mean, it was such a UK
All right, I'm going.
you know.
Who just started, Anthony? Who just started?
Is everybody taking a bathroom break? What's
This
going
is a
on?
bad plan.
We're going to find a drink somewhere because we got a drink to EJ.
I went to get the fucking water. It's a letter B, motherfucker. Why do you mention Jobson? Jesus Christ.
But it's interesting that they played that song on the UK tour, and Jobson didn't keep it for the second UK album. Bruford took it.
Yeah, it's
I think it was his song.
I mean, I saw him do it. It really was like a UK song. It was,
Yeah.
and if you listen, and on One of a Kind, it's like a UK song.
Yeah, basically. Eric, is that a Wooden Nickel record shirt you're wearing?
No, I don't think so. It's a bar
Oh, okay.
in New Mexico.
Wow. Okay. I was gonna say it's so Wooden Nickel. I'm like Wooden Nickel Record Sticks is original.
6, that's
record
right.
label? Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Wasn't Zazu on Wooden Nickel?
Don't know.
No.
You guys don't know,
Six
you guys don't know
were-
Zazu? I'll say that when we get to
We
Z.
should have a Prog Seat trivia night. We can throw all these things at
Wow.
each
We
other.
could do that. I did that on the Hudson Valley Squares a long
Did you?
time ago.
Oh,
That was
cool.
loads of fun. We could do that. We can definitely do that.
Why not?
I'll keep that in mind. That might be a fun thing to do like before the holidays or something.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind. All right, where are we? Lewis.
All right, my number one choice, and again, much like Ken, I didn't want to go for all the obvious choices because I hope people would mention them, and you have. But there's a band that I truly, truly, really love. I think partly because they're just really creative, and also they really wear their Devo influences on their sleeve. I'm talking about Bubble Math. I fucking love Bubble Math.
Yeah.
They're just great guys, great band. I think they only have 3 studio albums, if I'm not
That's it.
mistaken.
Yeah, that's it.
They're all different, but you can tell it's them. The last one is just ridiculously good, but they all are in their own way. So if you haven't had a chance to hear any of their records, please go and buy them. There it is. Turf Ascension. You got it backwards, but yeah, that's
Oh,
one.
yeah, there we go. Sorry, hold it up.
And yeah, Turf Ascension is a great record. I know that Steve Feigenbaum and Ken carry it, so you could hardly do. There's a lot of worse ways you could spend your money.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to them in 20 years. I have the first one.
Yeah.
So good. All three of their albums are amazing. Just really complex yet catchy and
I love them.
challenging music, but yet
Love them. Love
sweet
them. Love
and
them.
beautiful at the same
Pretty
time.
sure I saw them at Prog Day back a long time ago.
Great band. Good choice. All right, Ken.
All right, I'm going to cheat. So I wrote
No.
I wrote. What happened? Where did Luis go again? Where is it?
You said cheating.
Someone's at the door.
He left. He thought you were going into another list, so he took a break.
Luis, you're in Mexico. I can't call immigration services.
Wow.
So I'm going to cheat because I wrote up a description on my website, lasercd.com, about this about a year ago when it got reissued on vinyl. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Jog my memory. Great album, Boo Boo Annabellis. You guys know Boo Boo?
Yeah, that's Anthony's girlfriend.
Wow.
You guys, if you don't know Boo Boo, you should know Boo Boo. This is the band was from Argentina, and it is the best South American progressive rock album of all time. It's one of the great prog albums of the 70s. They were a large ensemble led by a composer named Daniel Andreoli. The instrumentation is violin, flute, sax, guitar, bass, and drums. There's a little bit of piano going on, but it's mostly, it's kind of devoid of keyboards for the most part. There are some wordless vocals, like kind of more like a choir that kicks in. Gives it almost like slightly, Pete, don't wince, a slight magma feel, but it's not. There's no chanting or anything like that. It's just like a large choir. And it's just 3 epic tracks, very dark, very, very strong connection to King Crimson, particularly from the guitar player, Eduardo Gotti. He's kind of cut from the same cloth as Robert Fripp, uses a lot of sustain when he plays. The interplay between the guitar and Sergio Polizzi's violin is very similar to Lux Tongue, period King Crimson, but there's something else going on. The way I described it, I said it's kind of like a white knuckle listen. You listen to this album, and there's just real tension throughout the whole thing, particularly when the choir kicks in. I said, like, if Gil Evans wrote a prog rock epic, it might sound like this. It's quite a masterpiece, and I mean, this is an essential album. It is available from time to time on CD, and I don't think I have it at the moment, but there are copies floating around, and the vinyl reissue, I think, should still be in print. Boo Boo Annabellis, essential, one of the greats.
Ooh, never heard that.
You need to hear it,
Sounds
and you
good.
will. You're going to hear it, Pete. You'll
Sounds
hear it
good.
soon. You'll hear it soon.
All right, George.
Number 1 is Bonnie Brunel, a French bass player. Came out in 1979, comes out of Chick Corea's band. He was playing with Chick at the time. He starts putting out solo albums the year after. I particularly like the 2 in the 80s, Ivanhoe and this one, Momentum. It's got Frank Gambale, Patrick Moraz, Kagi, John Wackerman. But made records through the 90s. Breaks off for the 2000s and forms a band called Cab, but he's kind of backburnered them, and he started putting albums out again in the 2010s. But it's another guy like Gurgle Borlai, doesn't want jazz to be boring, so this is an upbeat fusion. He's a fantastic fretless player, plays 5-string, plays upright. He's Jocko without the drug problem, basically. Check out his stuff, Bonnie Brunel.
Great player. Great player. All right, so my last pick for today, I had Brand X on my top 3 list as well, but I know they've been mentioned a couple times, and I had a couple of the bands that were like right there in my top 3, and the other one was Between the Buried and Me. But I wanted to pick the other band that hasn't been mentioned. I'm amazed. I thought for sure Ken was going to mention these guys, and they're probably my number 4, so they're going to be my number 3 or my number 1 tonight. From Sweden, they really only had 3. If memory serves me correctly, 3 albums that were kind of in this style, and then they kind of broke up and they became another band called Gin Lady. The band is Black Bonzo.
They're on my honorable mentions.
Are they? Yeah, I mean,
I have.
I mean, their first 2 albums are amazing. This is their first album, self-titled. The second album is killer. Yeah,
That's the one.
Great
That's
album.
it.
That's the one.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with the first 2 albums.
This is the one I did. Sound of the Apocalypse.
Yeah,
That's just so fucking good.
it's
It
so
really
good.
is,
I mean,
man.
they're heavy, but to me, they remind me of like a mix of like Demons and Wizards era Uriah Heep,
I was gonna
like
say the same
classic
thing.
Yes, and a little bit of classic Gentle Giant, all like thrown into a blender, and bloop, out they come. Great vocals, tons of keyboards, really good guitar work, lengthy tracks, just a total retro 70s vibe about their music. And I will say the band they kind of became, Gin Lady, is really good too, but they're more kind of like just like a rock band, right? They're kind of like
Rolling
a
Stones or something.
70s Rolling Stones band. I like them, but it's not quite the same as this.
He's a great singer, Magnus.
He really is. Yeah,
They were nice. They were nice guys. They were too early. That was the problem. The whole retro thing. I mean, they were kind of doing like what Bertha's doing, or what Ashford was doing. They had bad management issues. They were problematic for me, and they played it. They played, where was it?
Ozfest?
It was Rossfest, I think.
Yeah, it was Ozfest.
I think it was Rossfest. And then the keyboard player left. He left the band. I think he was frustrated, and that kind of killed the whole thing. I think the manager might have had like the rights to the name or something. It was a mess. They couldn't get out of that contract, basically. So they became Gin Lady. And the sound changed, and the different bands, just not the same thing. I mean,
No,
it's
it's not
fine for what it is, but it's those first 2 albums, they were great. I mean, I heard that the one Pete,
Especially the
when
second
you held
one.
up,
Mhm.
I heard that, and I was like, man, I want to work with these guys.
Yeah, this is a good album. Really, really good. So Black Bonzo is my final pick for today. Let's go around once again for some honorable mentions. Stephen.
Okay, so I did a 5, but we're at 4 because I already mentioned 1. So I'll start with band Sinister, kind of Canadian experimental rock band. Some people kind of say it's indie alt rock thing, but that's not what I hear when I listen to it. It's pretty straight up rock, but just played with lots and lots of crazy ideas. They just seem to, start with an idea and move it along. Lots of jamming. There's actually a track. This is Animals from 2014. There's a track where they finished the song by laughing because they've clearly amused themselves by what they've created as they're making it up. I kind of like the vibe of it. It's good fun. All the stuff is quite good. I've got Broken Parachute, which is a band that features a guy called Ben Bell, who is in Gandalf's Fist. He's in Fusion Orchestra 2. He's released a couple of albums under the name Patchwork Cacophony. I like Broken Parachute. They've only done 2 albums. It's somewhere between kind of the Tangent and Yes. It's kind of that sort of wistful, traditional prog done with a little bit of a twist. This is from 2019 called Living Dangerously. I have gone for Brother Ape, who are a Swedish band. Started out as a 4-piece, I think they're a trio now. This is the album Turbulence from 2009. A band that's kind of difficult to tie down. They do something that's kind of in that area that I obviously like Porcupine Tree and the Pineapple Thief, but there's bits of Mike Oldfield in there, there's bits of Vangelis in there, there's a little bit of jazz in there. The beats by this stage, when you get to kind of this era of the band, really busy, almost kind of dance beats, but definitely in a rock style, and I like that too. I must admit that a couple of their albums, the sound could be better, but I really like what they do. And my last one is Deck Burke. So this is the guy that was in Frost for their second album. He was one of the guys that founded Darwin's Radio. And since then, he's moved on to a solo career. This is Paradigms and Storylines from 2011. And he kind of falls into, as I talk about quite a lot, that UK kind of new prog. This is maybe kind of less prog, it has to be said. There's maybe more just kind of straight rock on here as well, but there's lots of great musicianship. And I really think that when he expands it out a little bit, it definitely falls into the prog realm. So Beck Burke is my last choice.
Cool.
Nice.
Chuck.
All right. I just have just a couple of albums, and so I just wanted to be a little bit, outside the box. Although one was mentioned already. First one is Kate Bush, and the second, what's it? I'm surprised no one's picked this one. Is the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper.
Who?
Who? I could have picked some Who too, but no. Anyway,
That's
but no,
W.
those are my two bands right there, and so those are my two honorable picks: the Beatles and Kate Bush.
Anthony.
I had three. I had Blackfield, their first album, which I think is phenomenal. Stephen, some of the Beatles tracks on here. I think it's some of better Stephen's guitar work on here too. I think he's very underrated as a guitar player. As Chad said, Brand X. This is Do They Hurt from 1970 or 1980. Contains my all-time favorite Brand X track, Cambodia. And then definitely somebody that nobody mentioned, coming from one of the big five of the prog bands, Tony Banks debuted A Curious Feeling, which is phenomenal, with Chester Thompson on drums from 1979.
Cool. All right, Chad.
All right, I got a couple honorable mentions here, so I'll go through the ones that already have been mentioned. We've got Bonzo, we got Bent Knee, and we've got Il Balletto de Bronzo. So great minds think alike. Band I mentioned before out of Baltimore. This is from several episodes ago.
Yes.
Bodine.
Yes.
I knew Luis would like that one.
Did you ever catch them live, Chad?
Several times. Yeah, they played with
Fucking
Phase
brilliant,
Three
yeah.
times back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
They played in Chris Lamka's store.
Yes.
Yeah,
Did they
we had
really?
those down mine. Yeah, so
They played with Orion all the time. They were incredible when they were on.
One of everybody's new favorites. Got to throw Birth in there. Well, here's one off the beaten path. It's an avant-garde band from Cuneiform called Bone. I don't know if anybody remembers this one. Nick Dudovsky, Hugh Hopper, John Roulat. Really a kind of off the wall avant-garde, but some really cool, catchy stuff. Some real angular guitar that's
Love
not
that guy, man.
not off-putting, but he's definitely whacked and does some really strange things with the guitar. But
I was
very
supposed
cool
to hang out.
stuff.
I was supposed to hang out with him this Friday.
Really?
Yeah, but I had to cancel, actually, sadly.
Yeah. So this one's called Uses Wrist Grab. Bone. Cuneiform. Cool album. And lastly, I'm going to go back to Sweden on Record Heaven. Here's one you might remember, Book of Hours.
Oh yeah.
Very much like in the anecdote vein,
yeah.
with male vocals, sort of that heavy Swedish keyboard laden prog. I can't even read the name on this. Art to the Blind is what this one is. Pretty solid album. If you like anecdote, and that's one to check out. And there's my honorable mentions.
Cool. Eric.
I was going to do two, but both of my honorable mentions were mentioned, so I'm going to throw an extra in, but I want to mention these bands again: Birdsongs and the Mesozoic, Petrophonics. Thank you, Chad, for that one, because I always bought the Near Fest bands as they got announced. Bubble Math. I don't have the new one, but I plan to get it. Challenging listen for those guys, but they're kind of all over the map, right? I mean, jazzy. Sometimes they even sound like echoing to me sometimes on certain songs. The last one I want to mention that hasn't been mentioned is this guy played it with Keith Emerson, Mark Bonilla. This is EE Ticket. It's got, I think it was produced by Kevin Gilbert. Ronnie Montrose is on this. I think the drummer from Tesla plays on this, but he's a great guitar player.
And
I,
Emerson's on that one. He's on
and
one
he is
track.
on that one too, I believe. And I didn't even know, I think that's all instrumental. I don't know if he was a singer at first. And then I think he's got another one that was on Reprise, American Matador, but
Yeah, and that one
he's
has
a
some
great
vocals on it.
player. So check him out.
Definitely.
Lewis.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat any of the ones that have been mentioned, but I have two left. One of them is a German band that I discovered thanks to this channel called Birth Control. I love those guys. I especially like Hoodoo Man,
Yeah.
Plastic People. Yeah, there you go. Great band. I love those guys. The other band doesn't really get mentioned very often, but most people that I know or that I work with, at some point or other, we had a heavy crush on Carla Kilstead from Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, and she is part of a band called Book of Knots. They've done 3 records. It's like a strange prog industrial klezmer kind of a mix. It's just really good stuff. And this is the record you play if you want to make sure that the woman or man that you're dating is a keeper. You play this fucking record and you watch their reaction.
Well, that's the album you play when you want your guests to leave.
Well, I mean, it depends. I don't have that many guests for that reason. But yeah, that's exactly right. It's not going to be a crowd pleaser, but it's that kind of shit that makes me extremely happy. So I wanted to give a shout out to Book of Knots because those guys are terrific, really terrific. So there you go.
Ken.
All right. Banco di Terra and Black Bonzo were on my honorable mentions list. They were mentioned. So I'm going to run through these quick. I got a bunch. Beggar's Opera, Waters of Change, great British band. You like Mellotron? Time Machine, incredible track.
Yep.
From Sweden, Barrett's Halls Band, very obscure jazz rock, kind of like Flaskipperna meets Bitches Brew, Miles Davis. Pretty rare. Great album. From Japan, Bikairon, Parallax. You like King Crimson? You'll like Bikairon. They were basically Japan's answer to King Crimson. All their albums are great. This Parallax is my favorite. An album that for some reason Biglietto Prelude Inferno made my list. I don't have
Yes.
hold up.
I love that record. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great Italian album.
Ticket to Hell. I love that.
Ticket to Hell. Album that I released on CD many years ago. Blue Motion. They were a Swiss band. It was an offshoot from a Swiss band called Circus. Instrumental, 2 keyboard players and a drummer. The drummer is Fritz Hauser. Recorded live in I think if I remember correctly, recorded live in the church. Very atmospheric. Here's one that will give George damp ankles. Born from Spain, Exprime la naranja, which, Luis, what does that mean? Exprime la naranja.
Squeeze the orange.
Phenomenal jazz rock album, kind of like Brand X. And George is trying to figure out how to steal this from me. One of my favorites, and kind of a little controversial, not everybody likes this album, but it is one of my favorites, from Spain, Eduardo Bort. He was a Spanish guitar player, kind of psychedelic, progressive, lots of Mellotron, some really killer guitar leads on it. And last that I have, a great jazz rock album from a great guitar player, Gary Boyle, the dancer. This was produced by Robin Lumley. It's got all the Brand X guys on here. Morris Pert's on here. Simon Phillips plays on it. Who else? As I mentioned, Morris Pert. Robin Lumley also plays on it. And, Gary Boyle, killer player. He also had another one called Electric Glide. That was great. I like the dancer. Had a few others.
You have a CD at the store, don't you, Ken?
I don't, actually. I don't think I do. But if I do, it's yours, man.
I just thought you sold it. I remember you had.
No, I think at one point, I think Esoteric reissued it and it was in print. I don't think it's in print anymore. I could be wrong.
Okay.
Electric Glide and The Dancer were the 2 great records that he made. And he was in he was in Soft Machine for a moment.
Yep.
So great. I had a few others, but Bram Stoker, Heavy Rock Spectacular.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, Bakken. I don't know if you guys know Bakken. They were
Oh, yeah.
great. They were Bloquet from Spain. They were like a symphonic rock band. And one last one, I should have pulled it out to hold up the cover. It's kind of a funny album. It's called Ballatira Sanamachica. It's a fake prog album. Basically, it was purported to be this super rare Italian prog album from 1974, except it wasn't. It was a modern album done in the 90s by, everybody thinks, Japanese prog musicians, Japanese musicians, and they basically decided to make a 1974 Italian prog rock album. And some with the vocals, there's a little bit of a Japanese accent, kind of gives it away. Also, all the text on the back of the album is nonsense and not really Italian. It's like made up Italian. Everything about it is off just a little bit, but for a while, collectors were going crazy because they thought this was the real thing that somebody turned up like a box of them. But it's actually a pretty good album, but it's not a 1974 Italian album. It's really like a 1992 Japanese album. And Ballatira Sanamachica.
I love it.
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of those bands. There was a band called Damenbart that was supposed to be some long lost German album. Then there was this sci-fi label that was supposedly, there were all these albums that turned up that were supposedly archival stuff from the 70s, and it was all bullshit. It was all bullshit.
Pull one over on us.
Yeah.
Master level trolling.
Ballatira Sanamachica. So anyway, that's what I got.
George, what do you got left?
I got three. I got first the Brecker Brothers,
Nice.
funk fusion band that ran from the mid 70s to the early 80s, and they came back for 2 albums in the 90s. The records tended to be spotty, to be generous. Other than the debut or the live album, they're real hit or miss. So this is one of those groups that I would actually recommend this Greatest Hits Volume 2. This almost covers it. I mean, it's really about as well chosen as you're going to see. And probably the two greatest technicians and improvisers on their instruments in the last 30 or 40 years. You got a one and done guitar player from California, Lindsey Bolt. This is a heavy fusion, kind of Mahavishnu, with like a little Zeppelin vibe, and a little Ponty. A lot of big names on here: Jerry Goodman, Derek Sherinian, Stu Ham, Atma Anur, Mingo Lewis, of all people. I haven't seen him much lately, but yeah, that's really good. And the obscure pick, guy named Robert Baglione. He's a guitar player from around here. Also jazz rock fusion, kind of tribal tech. Robert's he's an MI guy. He's studied with Henderson, studied with Gambale, so he's got all that. This also has a lot of guests on: Victor Wooten, Scott Kinsey, Bill Dickens, Jimmy Earl. It's real good upbeat fusion. So check robertbaglione.com. You can see all his stuff.
Doesn't Terry Bozzio play on that Breckers live album?
Yeah, one of his best performances.
Yeah, the Brecker Brothers were such a great band, but man, like another one of those like fusion bands from the 70s that insisted on putting vocals on like half of their albums.
Cringy vocals.
Yeah, just play, guys. Just play.
Yes. No vocals on fusion. Come on.
No. It's like because the stuff that's great on those albums are great, and then you got these vocal pieces on.
Yeah.
That collection's got no vocal tunes.
I know, right? Yeah, it's funny because I had that collection, and I was like, there's got to be even other deeper tracks. So I went, and there's not a lot of albums, so I went and got them all, and then I was like, now I know the reason why I got the collection to begin with. I had all the great stuff already. All right, most of my honorables got mentioned already, so I'm just gonna mention the ones that have not been called out already. Let's see. Here's one. I mean, here's a band that kind of like they sort of fit here, maybe they sort of don't. Baker Gurvitz Army. So Ginger Baker and the two Gurvitz brothers. Some of that stuff is kind of proggy. It's kind of hard rock. It's kind of floats in between the two. Barclay James Harvest.
Hey, can I? I had them on my list, and I listened to Time Honored Ghost today. It wore out its welcome for me.
I have always said that my favorite. I have a bunch of their albums.
Yeah.
To me, they were better live. Like if you listen to those early live albums, those are great.
The double live album is good, and Barclay James Harvest live is good.
Yeah, I mean, there's more Mellotron. The guitar is louder. It's just like this is what I want to hear. The albums to me are very tame. I think they're well produced. They sound great. They got great covers. But I almost never listen to them. And when I want to hear them, I play the live stuff.
I took it off.
They're amazing musicians too, and you never know that until you hear them live.
Yeah.
I had Time Honored Ghosts in my collection for decades, and I just, like I said, I had it on my honorable mentions. I pulled it out just because I hadn't heard it in a long time. I'm like, I don't know, not great.
Yeah. Let's see what else has not been mentioned. Big Train. Fairly popular among prog fans. Band from the UK. Who I like quite a bit. Got a lot of really good albums. If you like the kind of more folky prog, neo prog type of thing. Let's see. Baglione was mentioned. I think the only one I have left is Bonzo 11 Stevens. Great fusion supergroup trio. There you go. Both albums are really good. For me, hearing Terry Bonzo, we know obviously is great, but hearing Steve Stevens in that capacity, I think was pretty mind-blowing when that first Bonzo 11 Stevens album came out. It's like, wow, this guy can really play, because we only really knew him from Billy Idol and then working briefly with Vince Neil. But so that's all I got. Everything else was mentioned.
There was one other that I just thought of. What about the Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, Gary Moore album?
Oh, BBM?
Yeah.
More blues rock, but yeah, I totally dig that.
I thought that was like a great Cream album.
Yeah. I guess the egos could not work well together because that was pretty. It came out at the wrong time too. It's mid '90s. Nobody's caring about that kind of stuff then. But
they broke up like after like their first gig or so, I think.
Yeah, it was the tour did not last. Yeah. Great stuff though. All right, well there you have it, everybody. The letter B, our favorites. You know how it works. Down in the comments down below, Chuck down there somewhere. List your 3 favorite bands, prog metal fusion that start with the letter B. And we will do this once again next week with the letter C as we march our way through the alphabet to work our way through Z. Like I said, we will take little breaks here and there after a couple of weeks to do another topic, and then we'll get right back to it. So we're not going to do A through Z continuously all the way through, but we will do a couple of breaks. But I want to thank everybody here for putting their list together. We will put them down in the comments below tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. Everybody will send them to me and I'll post them down below after the show is aired. So thanks again. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. Check us out on Facebook, but of course we're here all together all the damn time.
Always, all the damn time.
And make sure you hop on over to lasercd.com to check out all the latest and greatest stuff that Ken's got for sale up on his website. And for Stephen Reed, Chuck Alvarez, Anthony Ferrara, Chad Hutchinson, Eric Porter, Louis Nasser, Ken Golden, and George Lemie, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you next week on In the Prog Seat. Tune in tomorrow. Got 4 new album reviews coming at you tomorrow, so don't miss those. And have a good night, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.